And welcome everyone to our session on Next Practices Live. As you probably know, we started conducting these sessions several days ago because we understood that people around the world were all struggling with similar issues and no one had best practices. We've never been this way before. So we wanted to provide a way for people to share what they're doing, learn from each other, and figure out what they're going to try to do next. Thus the name Next Practices. One of the issues that's come up many times is what's the financial impact of the pandemic and our reactions to it? And especially for the companies that we're all looking to provide that essential infrastructure. We're really fortunate today to have John Winters with us. He's the Chief Legal Officer for Liberty Latin America, which provides telecommunications services in Chile, parts of Central America, and a lot of the Caribbean as well. Major operator, trying to do things that are really tough to do right now. So John, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and welcome everybody. I appreciate having the time to participate in the talk today, and I hope everyone is staying safe during these difficult times around the world.
So John, let's just jump right into it. Tell us what your company is doing to keep customers connected during this time, and what are the financial impacts for the company?
Yeah, sure, Mark. Thanks. First, just quickly to remind everybody what Liberty Latin America is all about. As Mark said, we are a telecommunications company, so we operate in over 20 countries across Latin America and the Caribbean under different brands that you would notice in our consumer brands in those markets, including VTR, Flow, Liberty in Puerto Rico, MásMóvil in Panama. And we do two things. We provide your standard consumer business with broadband and telephony, but we also have a B2B business where we connect with businesses and governments and provide them with services. And we also have a subsea and terrestrial network, a cable network that connects over 40 countries and markets across the region. So, that's a little bit of the background of our company. If you didn't know about us, Liberty Latin America is the parent company, and we're listed on NASDAQ. So, to answer specifically your question, Mark, we've been focused on a few things. First, we're really focused on keeping our employees safe, healthy during this time, and employed, and doing great work for connecting individuals and customers. Right, that is our primary role at this time. And so what do? We have a crisis management team and business continuity program that we triggered early in this. That was probably about 6 weeks ago that we put that. We had it in place, but we triggered it, and they're working. They have daily meetings to track everything that's going on, both for employees and in the business. We were one of the first companies in the region to cancel all travel, suspend all travel. Obviously, we have to travel a lot, so we did that to help with controlling the spread, but also helping with employees and things like that. We're providing, because we're a service company, we do have to have people out in the field tending to the network. And so we are an essential service in all of our jurisdictions. And so we have to be out there both maybe installing, but also servicing the network. So we've been providing our service technicians with PPE, personal protection equipment for themselves, but also if they're going into people's homes to make sure that people are comfortable when we're providing this service. As a wider function, we've been starting 3 weeks ago. We're pretty much working from home on this. Most of the people who can work from home are encouraged to work from home, to abide by the stay-at-home orders, but also to help them during this time. And that includes our call center. We have really moved as a company and have almost 75% of our call center representatives across the region now being able to work from home. And that was no small task to be able to get the technology and the capabilities in place to do that. So that that's what we're doing for our employees, and we're balancing that and that safety and the need to get services out and respecting the kind of the stay-at-home orders and the things that people are requiring to do. And so the second thing we're focused on is servicing our customers. Right. And obviously connectivity has never been more important in the world as it is today. You know, we couldn't be having this in a video format without the connectivity we have. So but it's requiring us to change. So what are we doing? Because we don't have our same sales channels. You know, a lot of times in the Caribbean and Latin America, it's in stores, in-person stores, and those are not accessible right now. So what are we doing? What are we seeing across the industry? You know, it's accelerating the promotion of digital adoption, right? And that's both in terms of what we're doing now and working from home, but also digital channels to, you know, we're rolling out virtual stores across our footprint to continue to provide the service. We're promoting online and digital payment tools for people. That is not always something that's natural or something that's been historic in this region. So we're doing that. And I think what is really interesting is new installation methods for people. You know, self-install, which maybe might be useful, might be common in the U.S. and other places, is not so common in all parts of the world. So really helping people with the install, but it's also remote self-install. So you might get it, and then there's a number you can call to help you connect the boxes or connect to the services. You know, we're also offering on the service side, we're offering discounts for people who have lost their jobs or are really suffering during this time or can't pay because of the crisis. So we're offering different types of services so they can remain online, getting information. Their kids can do education and doing things like that. Like all operators, we're doing that. We're also zero rating important sites, critical sites at this time, providing free access to channels and enabling virtual learning sessions. We've also increased internet speeds and mobile speeds and things of that nature to really help people during this crisis. You asked about the financial and how this impacted financial. You know, we are a public company. We just completed our first quarter results for 2020. So I am limited in what I can say about the direct financial impact to our business, just because of you know, SEC rules and insider trading. But you know, I'll try to talk directly in terms of what we're seeing, and we will have a clearer picture in you know, the next 4 to 6 weeks, especially when we report earnings on, you know, in the beginning of May. I mean, we've definitely seen in the Caribbean in particular, you know, an impact like everybody has on the tourism industry, and that's something that we're focused on. A company is understanding how that impacts not only the tourism and the hotels who are sometimes our customers, but also the people, the citizens who are employed by those, and how that will impact the wider economies. Collections, as I noted before, we're trying to do different ways of collecting and giving people the opportunity to pay so they can continue their service. So those are a couple of things that we're seeing. You know, and we're having impacts on collections, goes in both ways in terms of cash versus digital society and channels, but also on policies of governments. You know, so one of the things that we've been working with governments on is, you know, we still have to collect from people who are working, who are earning money. You know, they should be paying their bills to, you know, to keep companies operating and financial people operate. So working with governments to say, okay, we're going to help the people who are in the most need, but we still have to be taken care of as a company because we have cash flows that we have to take care of. So that from the financial side. And then, you know, from a process side, what we've done as a company, and our CEO has spearheaded this, we created a task force, scenario planning task force, a number of weeks ago to really set it aside from the business to understand the different scenarios that are going to arise out of this crisis, and what that impact will have both on our near term and our long term, and what are the things that we should be doing. I think that every company is looking at from a financial perspective, what type of costs that we can take out of the business that isn't going to impact employees or ability to deliver service. What type of capital expenditures can we take out without impacting things that matter for the future? So for example, we still do new builds and extending our network. That's something that we want to preserve for the future, and analyzing those types of things is really active and busy right now in our company, and making sure that we're still investing for the future, but keep in mind of our financial viability in the short term.
And thank you, John. You alluded to something that is really important and difficult here, and that is you're a publicly traded company, so are there things or types of information that you can't reveal at certain times, but at the same time, people in the regulatory community are going to be held accountable for how well this industry performs. What kinds of information do the regulators need to have so they can keep a good eye, a good finger on the pulse of how your finances are doing and what they can expect for performance in the future, especially on the other end of this pandemic?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, we do communicate regularly with the governments and regulators. We reached out to them early in this process, one, to see how we could help them, both in their own work from home statuses, and things of that nature. So we've been working closely with them. And we're transparent as we can be with the regulators on a one-to-one basis. So we give them, and I think what they're focused on right now, and correctly so, was on the network. What's the usage of the network? Where are people using the networks? And we did see spikes in the uses of our networks, close to 30 to 40% during this last month, increase in home broadband usage. Lower on the mobile side, probably closer to 15% increase on the mobile side, which makes sense because, and that's actually a good sign that the policies that the governments are putting in place is working, because as more people are away from the parks and the shops, mobile usage will go down, right? And home broadband will go up, and that's consistent with what we've seen. And so giving them the stability and the comfort that the networks are working the way they should be, and that they're going to continue to work, is one of the, one set of information that we provide. On the financial side, we do have regular reporting with the regulators. And in my time, my experience, and what I'd say during a time like this, which is important, is more just one-on-one bilateral discussions, and so that the regulators and government can really understand, okay, what it is that, what are the risks for the company, and so that we can put policies, emergency policies or whatever in place that gets the government and the citizens what they need, but also preserves the long-term viability of companies that are providing these types of services. And we actually do it with, in some jurisdictions, we do it with other quote unquote, I'm not going to call us a utility, but similar type services, water, electric type thing. We work with those because we're in kind of a similar position as some of those companies.
Thank you. It's hard to have exactly the right kinds of conversations with government officials and regulators at this time. You've talked about the types of discussions you've had internally, talking through different scenarios. You've talked about talking with regulators kind of one-on-one. What kinds of conversations, strategic conversations, do you have with the regulators and the government officials so they can think well about the different options that they have and the different options that you're considering, so that you're kind of on the same page, or at least you've thought through similar options?
Yeah, so one of the things that I talked about before is kind of the network piece of it. So one of the things that we've talked to governments about, and they're very flexible on this, and is on spectrum allocation. So in a number of jurisdictions, and this applies across all operators, it's not just us, the governments have made temporary spectrum available for us so that people just quicker access to the internet, and reduce congestion where necessary. So that conversation happens. I think conversations about, what is the right balance between governments, requiring companies like ours not to suspend service, with, having responsible people pay, for the service, right? So for example, we will offer lifeline services for people who can't pay during this time, but we shouldn't just have people just having free service during some. There's two other things that we deal with is public service announcement type stuff. So government getting out fair use of internet. So for example, we did this in Chile, for example, very well with the industry to be like, people need to think twice about, when are you downloading that large file? Because it's impacting someone next to you who is doing a critical job or people trying to get educated, right? Those types of things are the conversations we had. With the recent one this week that we worked with governments on, and they were very amenable to this. I don't know if people saw this, but there was some rumors out there that 5G advancement was causing a spread of COVID. And that actually in the UK had real impact because people vandalized equipment because of this. And so we work closely with the governments to quickly respond to get public service announcements out there that says there is no connection to those types of things. So it's those types of conversations in that we have ongoing conversations that are important.
All right. So one last question before we turn things over to the audience for questions, and that is, what are the things you're learning so far that you would like for other companies and government officials to know?
Well, I think the primary thing is that people's safety is paramount. You got to make sure you take care of your employees, both on the safety first front, but trying to make sure you preserve as many jobs as possible where we can. That's one of the things that we should be working together as, and redeploying people, try to re-educate people in terms of doing jobs, especially in the tourism industry. That's one thing. Communication is a huge. I mean, our business has really thrived during this time because we've been able to communicate with each other and as a business and across functions. So continuing those levels of communications, whether it's within the company or with governments or with, frankly, with our competitors. At this time, I think is really, really important, and those are two of the primary messages that I've taken so far from this. The other thing is, we've lived through a lot of different crises in this region. We've got hurricanes come through, whether it was Bahamas last year or Maria and Irma that impacted. And I think people need to think about the differences in those situations and this one, which in this one is we don't have to rebuild networks, and we don't have to rebuild infrastructure. And that goes for the travel industry, that goes for other industries, and how we apply maintaining the infrastructure to a new way of doing business, a new way of operating. And I think those are the types of things that people should be thinking about and taking away from this.
All right. Well, thank you. I have several questions left, but I'd like to see if anyone in the audience has questions before I turn back to my own list. Please, in the group chat, just list whatever questions you might have, and we'll have John answer them. So I'm not seeing anything yet, John. So there's another question that's really kind of important for you. You're uniquely positioned to be able to answer it. And that is, what advantages or disadvantages are there for being a company that serves multiple countries? There are others other companies that are country specific. Yours is different from that. What do you see as the benefits and the difficulties of that in this situation?
Yeah, so the advantages are we can take learnings from different operations and countries and apply that across the board. And that really helps in a time like this where we're sharing information, whether it's in our space in terms of talking to governments, but also in other space like in our T&I team. They're real. They cross all of the operations. So really seeing what's working from a network perspective, on the commercials, what's working in one market, and then adapting it quickly to another one. Those are the types of things I think that are really an advantage for us operating in multiple markets. It's also in the long term, what we've seen is, one market will prop up another market when one is suffering, right, for one thing or another. So and that just helps with our economics and our financial situation. It helps with our balance sheet to be able to have that sort of flexibility. And we have an excellent finance and treasury team that allows us to move money around a lot to support the wider organization.
So one of the issues that comes up when we have times like this is whether or not the government should try to provide financial support for some of the companies. Tell us how you think about that, because the governments have their own stresses, companies have their stresses. No one has an easy time right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a time where governments do need to provide those types of services to the companies that have been there for years in the past. I mean, in the Caribbean, for example, we've been there serving for over 100 years, and we plan to be there for another 100 years. So, and it's not always just providing financial support, right? In some cases, you need to have financial support to do that. Sometimes it's providing the right message or providing the right tax and labor situation to handle these types of things. So I think each industry tends to be a little bit different. I think the tourism industry in the Caribbean will need some help right now, and to get people back employed. But it's really talking to multinationals, talking to NGOs. I think this is the time where multinationals like ours, governments and NGOs really need to come together to figure out what the right answer is. And frankly, people need to be honest and transparent. No one's been through this this type of situation before, at least no one that's probably on this call. So.
All right, we have a question from Rolf. Rolf wonders what you see as how the industry looks once we start coming out the other side, post-COVID-19. What do things look like from your perspective?
Well, it's positive. I mean, the industry, again, like I said, our networks are still there. They're still going to be there, and we're still investing to expand those networks to reach more people. So, I mean, from an industry perspective, I think it's very positive. I think some of the things and I think it's positive also because it's forcing companies like ours, and I've talked to other companies like ours, and they're doing the same thing. It's forced us to really accelerate the digital advancement of the companies that will make it easier for people to get our services and use our services, easier for people to top up, easier for people to communicate with each other, easier for people to learn. So I really think it's positive. There will be, of course, short-term implications to this. When the tourism sector goes down, B2B gets hurt. So we will have to manage through those types of things. But in the long run, I mean, people are going to need internet. People are going to need to communicate. People are going to need the entertainment services that we provide. I think it's a positive road.
Yeah. So Melissa Harris has a question that extends exactly what you were talking about. She wonders how you're managing sales channels, especially the B2B, because a lot of that is typically face-to-face. How are you working that now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably better for my B2B team to answer that. But they reach out to the customers but by phone. In some of our jurisdictions, they were still able to, when it first started, they were still able to go talk to the customers face to face. That stopped now, but they constantly are on the phone with them, offering them different types of services, offering them different types of financing packages and things of that nature to help them through the system. But it's really finding different ways, having Teams calls or Zoom calls, but really keeping that connection with the customer, and finding out from the customer how they're impacted by this, and what do they need in the near term and the long term.
Right. We also have a couple of questions from David Cox, whom I think you know. So maybe these are real softball questions or something, or we'll find out, I guess. So
Yeah.
he has basically two. One, he wonders, what is the company taking away as lessons for its kind of long-term perspective and planning for future events like this? Then also, any company has to make sacrifices during tough times.
Right.
And we saw when we interviewed the CEO of Manila Water, he was having to make choices about which bills to pay, and he was choosing based upon which suppliers he wanted to make sure were there, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. So thinking about long-term planning, how does this affect that for you, and thinking through scenarios, but then also what are the things that you really can't let go of, the biggest imperatives for you?
Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, those aren't softballs, David. But so on what lessons learned part, I think one of the things is you have to trust your processes. So, for example, I mentioned that we had a crisis management process, and we just triggered that, and that worked in order in terms of getting information out to everybody about what was going on, but also gathering information and allowing the executive team to be able to respond. So I think, that advanced planning on whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a hurricane, whatever it is, and trusting that process and procedures are going to work, I think is one lesson that we learned. Also, you have that, but you also have the flexibility. You have to have the flexibility as a management team to know, well, that's not exactly going to work, so let's do this a little differently, and trusting the people in your organization, trusting other functions that they're doing the right thing, to act quickly and nimbly to respond. So those are the types of things from an organizational perspective that we found worked. And then I think what setting up, as Ballin, our CEO, did, setting up a scenario task force in a situation like this, where you take some of these harder reviews about what's the future going to look like away from the direct business, so the business can operate and take care of the employees and the customers, as I mentioned, but also you're planning for the future. I think those are a couple of things that I've taken away from this. I also, the resiliency of people, the faith of people is just amazing during this time. I think that at least in our company, in my experience, that's been really, really great. I think on the questions on the sacrifices, yeah, we've had to make sacrifices. Obviously, some of them are easy, like travel costs. We don't have to worry about travel costs right now, so those are some easy things that you can take out. But we've had to make some hard decisions about, like, some marketing spend, some other advertising spend that's important for our business. But when you're looking at that compared to paying salaries and keeping people employed, keeping the lights on, things like that. But we've been smart, like all companies, I think, have been, about figuring out what we can flex during this time and what we can't. We've also been reviewing our contracts with our suppliers and talking to our suppliers, and our suppliers have been great. When we light up additional spectrum like we did on a temporary basis, you need some software that licenses to go along with that. And companies like Ericsson has stepped up and said, okay, well, for this temporary period, we're going to give you guys a break on this stuff, right? So it's really having those conversations with suppliers who are willing to help. And again, going back to your question, Mark, about kind of having in multiple markets, it helps having multiple markets, right? It helps having that scale so that we have supply chain or vendors who know that we're going to be there for the long term.
All right, thank you. So John, I've got about in the audience about 10 more minutes worth of questions. Can we hold you for 10 more minutes to get through these next three, or do you need
Yeah,
to?
no, I'm here for until the top of the hour, Mark.
Okay, oh, great. So Ignatius has a question about what kinds of pricing packages, service packages do you have for governments, especially designed for their education needs? As you know, the governments are struggling with now the distance learning, not done this before. How do you help out with respect to that?
Yeah, so what we've actually done in the Caribbean in particular is we've partnered with an education service called One-on-One Education Services to provide access, and this provides access to basically a comprehensive virtual education platform. And we partner with the governments. I think it started in Bahamas, but it's now in Jamaica and a number of Caribbean islands are using this. And so, we're doing things like that through our foundation in Puerto Rico. We're doing similar things. So we're using that, and it's going to be different for each market to a certain extent. But we are partnering with the governments in some places where we will subsidize or help subsidize devices for schools. We were already doing that already. We already had outreach even before the crisis and working with libraries and schools and providing connectivity devices and e-learning opportunities. So this to us, this is just an extension of what we're already doing, accelerated and a bigger scale, but it's part of that. So it remains flexible for the needs of the governments and the schools that we support.
Lisa Edgar points out that the electricity needs of the telecom company and your customers change now, and that affects how the electric utilities are providing service. What kinds of coordination, what kinds of discussions do you have with them on how you can work together to make sure that your services and their services work well together?
Yeah, it's a good question. That happens a lot at the local level, and our local management teams really work closely with the other utilities like power to make sure that if power goes down somewhere, right, that we know, and so we can advise our customers, or if we're seeing huge spikes in usage, we're communicating with the power company, so they know what's going on. It's really just kind of ongoing industry kind of participation, and it is unique per market, because sometimes you have government-owned utilities and electrics, and sometimes you have privately owned as well. So it kind of depends market to market, but it is a really important thing for the power and connectivity. I think it's really important. We've done it before in other crises when we've had hurricanes, and the poles go down, which is where a lot of our lines and our cell towers are around. We have to work closely with the power company at that time as well.
All right, so one last question, then I need to open it up for the audience to be able to talk with each other. This is from Sydney. Sydney's curious that you are offering special packages, if you will, pricing arrangements to help with this pandemic time. What are your thoughts on those that kind of become permanent because they maybe prove themselves or they're just difficult to undo versus those you might unwind? How do you think about those adjustments down the road a few months?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and one we get from the commercial team quite often. And we're still in the early days of this, right? So it's still very much going to be fluid. What we've what we said is like, this is a 3-month package, you know, to get us through this time, right? And then after that, let's have a conversation. It's just important to have a customer to provide our conversations like, okay, what can you do now? Where are you on payment? What can you do? And so these plans, we've been trying to clear and transparent with our customers, saying this is an interim plan to help get us through this time. And then we'll go back to either the original plan you had, or maybe we have to go to a different plan because your economics and your situation has changed. There's balances for everybody, right? Right, because someone who was used to receiving a higher speed and they're not making as much now, maybe they have to sacrifice some speed or some streaming of entertainment devices in exchange for something else, just like we're making sacrifices as a company. So, you know, that's the way we're handling it right now, is just being clear and transparent on our packages as we can be.
All right, thank you. So Rebecca, let me turn it over to you to tell people how we can have a discussion amongst the audience.
Sure. So the next, 10, 20 minutes or so, we're available here. In our past sessions, people and participants have felt it was helpful to talk with each other. So if you would like, in the participant bar at the bottom, if you select that, you'll have an option to raise your hand. And we would ask that you would raise your hand, and at that point I can unmute your audio. And if you're willing, we can also unmute your video if you would like to, show your video feed. That would give you an opportunity. You can sort of share your experience, maybe, or if you have questions of the audience, or if you have additional questions of John, I believe he's available for a little while longer. We are happy to field that and moderate that at this time. Or it's getting later in the week, so people might be a little fatigued.
Maybe we've just said all there is to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would be interested, the last point that that John was talking about, well, Melissa raised her hand, so let me be quiet on that and let her speak.
Hey, Melissa.
Hi. Since I'm in the training industry, I was just curious, John, if now with a lot of employees working at home, it would be nice to do some online training, but of course there's so many challenging things going on. I just wondered if training is buzzing around within the organization, or it's kind of a dead deal right now.
Yeah, I mean, people should still be trying to learn and train on different things. So I think that I think what we're seeing is you have an initial sort of acceleration of work and just of dealing with the crisis. I'm starting to see it now where people are getting back to more of a business as usual, including training and learning. I don't think that stuff should stop. Now more than ever, those types of things are important.
Hey, anyone else? So I'm curious from the audience, John talked about how they're dealing with making sure that temporary measures are temporary and they can still learn from them. I was wondering how anyone else is thinking about that. Are you thinking about some of the things that you've done in the interim you would like to become permanent, and here's how you make sense of that, or clearly here's how you get back to something that's more normal? I was wondering what people's thoughts and experiences were so far. Now, see, this is where meeting physically as opposed to digitally is useful, because we can put a microphone in front of someone's face and ask them to answer the question. Can't do that. I mean, at least not yet. We'll figure it out, though.
I mean, Mark, I'd be interested to hear if anybody else from, Caribbean or Latin America. I mean, one of the things that we've, back to collections, right? Because a lot of collections in the Caribbean is cash based, right? And that's what we have. And I'm trying to see what other companies or people are thinking about in terms of dealing with the dilemmas of one, stores not being open to collect cash and do that stuff. That there's other companies out there and solutions that they're coming up with.
Okay, good question. Anyone working on that? I know it's been an issue here in the US for several different reasons, but what we call the unbanked or the underbanked, people are trying to figure out how we can just issue cards for people, a plastic card that would have money on it. There's people that are trying to think in the cryptocurrency space. Can they do something there? Even if it's tied to the country's normal currency, just a different type of a system that goes off of blockchain as opposed to going through banking, which can be more expensive. But that's something that takes a little while to do. We can't do it real quickly.
Yeah, and that's obviously in the Caribbean in particular, I think that's something that the governments and the financial institutions really need to work on in the future, is being able to enable that type of financial transactions.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So, John, I think we're close enough to our time. Well, Melissa raised her hand again. So Melissa, go ahead, please.
I was just going to mention that we've done a lot of work with Safaricom over in Kenya, and it seems like they've really done a brilliant job in terms of how to serve the groups that we're talking about, and have just done some brilliantly innovative things. And I haven't worked with them the last couple of years, but I know that they were just leading the world in terms of how they had dealt with this at one time.
So Melissa, is it a mobile money type of a function? What exactly are they trying to do?
Yeah, and a lot of it is because the people there in the country are wanting to send money to other people. It's kind of like a Western Union, how to get money there. But because that country is facing similar challenges like the Caribbean in terms of access to cash, they've just done a lot of different things. And I wasn't involved in actually the components of it. I was just there trying to help them sell more of it to different people throughout the country. But it just might be worth taking a look at some of the things they're doing in case there are some ideas that we could share within the Caribbean region.
Yeah, I don't know how, and maybe John, how prevalent is mobile money in the Caribbean? I know in Africa it's really popular. What about in the Caribbean?
It's relatively non-existent, mobile money in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of diaspora things going on with money coming in from outside the Caribbean to help families and the like. But the mobile money like M-Pesa, if you're thinking about that from Africa, that's not something that exists in our markets, and that's one of the things I'm encouraged about from this situation is hopefully this will accelerate some of that digitization type products.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone else before we wrap up?
Lawrence here.
Oh, go ahead, Lawrence. I didn't see your hand up. My apologies.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that from that front on the digital side, in the Eastern Caribbean currency sector, they were doing a pilot. So I think on digital EC dollar, but it was still in the pilot phase when this whole thing came up. So I think it may be accelerated by the circumstances of COVID right now, but it was still in a sort of pilot phase at this point in time, and was not really extended to, across the wider population within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. But it is something that as I said, is currently a pilot within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. That's the countries that use the EC dollar.
Yeah. So John, cable and wireless involved in that at all, or is that Digicel pretty much?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that as closely, especially as a pilot program right now.
Okay.
It's
I don't
basically
know.
run by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. It's a pilot that is run out of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
Ah, okay.
Yes,
Banking system's involved. All right.
Yeah,
banking
yes, the
system.
banking system involved, and some of the same things that we're talking about, the issues of zero rating, and it's basically we operating over the network, using the telecommunication network for people to be able to seamlessly pay money to each other based on what John was saying earlier, where you can, you go to a store and there's a almost immediate transfer of money from your account to the person's account based on that digitized dollar, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I do have another question on the chat now. Rebecca, I guess I'll go ahead and read it. This is from Yasmin Chong, and I apologize if I mispronounced the name. Yasmin is wondering about any kind of long-term impacts on your capital project upgrades. You talked about those being delayed. Do you see long-term impacts on those?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the capital project is, right? And what I'm proud about with our company right now is the capital projects that support our network infrastructure, our network build, which is just a euphemism for expanding our networks to connect the unconnected. Those are the things that we're preserving as a company for a couple of reasons. One, connecting the unconnected is something that we feel strongly about, and extending our network to those places where people don't have it right now, whether it's mobile or fixed, is really important to us as a company. But two, from a financial perspective, this is a tremendous crisis, obviously, that we're going through, but as a company, you need to be prepared for tomorrow, right? And so keeping those types of investments going is important, because we need to be there when we come out of this, and we will come out of this. We need to be there to deliver for customers and our key stakeholders. So, that's kind of a really proud for our company that we're looking at different ways, different capital projects, right? Not all capital projects are created equal, right? So if you have sort of an internal, like IT internal, system that you had in the plan for 2020, maybe that has to be delayed, but not the things that touch our customers, not the things that touch our networks. Those are things that we will preserve for as long as we can.
Okay, very good. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions. So John, let me thank you for taking the time to talk with us and share your experiences and your ideas.